Today we are going out to the Mukundra mountain range in Barberton, where gold was first discovered here after Pilgrim's Rest. So we're going to go with a local tour guide, and she's going to be taking us to the abandoned town called Eureka City. So let's go and see some more about South Africa's gold rush.
Hey everybody, so it's Andrea from Barberton Adventures, and we're going to have an adventure with Jade and Gareth and the kids today. Okay, so between Barberton and Shebaman, there are 26 little, I think it's 26, little shebeens, taverns in the olden days where you would ride with your horse and your horse could get something to drink and you could also get something to drink. Some of them were a little bit upmarket, but some of them were seriously dodgy. But yeah, to get to Shebaman, it would take you around about 4 hours coming from Barberton on horseback. Hi guys, so welcome to the Sheba Mausoleum. This is our cemetery where all our guys that used to work on Shebaman were actually buried. Inside the mausoleum there's one family, and then on the outside there is between the ages of 2 years old and 40 years old. There was, in the 1900s, a black fever pandemic that came past, and most of the people were succumbed to high fevers. So it is very sad, but at least we've got a very nice memorial for them in the area.
The Barberton daisy, endemic to Barberton.
Throughout Barberton we have these blue plaques, and on every blue plaque that you find you have the geological interest of the area. So just to give you some concept of where we are at the moment, this is Eureka City. So if you look up to the further left where those trees are right in the background, that's Eureka City. If you move over the escarpment to the right, those little mountains over there, that is the Three Sisters. Then you get the Bearded Man. Right in front of you is actually the Shebaman Dam. Right in front of us in the front is also Brays Golden Quarry, and we're going to be going into the quarry in about an hour. And they also show you where is the Shebaman based, and also the Downsdale Syncline, which comes across us over this way and then moves over towards the Geo Trail route.
So you said how many mines are in this area?
Round about 86.
86 mines, that's crazy. So this track over here was the original wagon road that they would use to come down to the Victoria Hotel on the top of the mountain.
Okay, so welcome to the Victoria Hotel. This was the middle marker between Barberton and getting to Eureka City. This is one of the largest hotels, and over a weekend when they hosted events like donkey races, horse races, you can actually see the horse track to your left, and here going up, the old horse track race course. This is where the booking office was, so you would then purchase your tickets to place bets against the horse or the donkey. And the end line was a little bit further down, so it was a quarter mile. And they would have these competitions along with cricket and tennis and all these type of things about once a month. And everybody would then come up here. This might just be the facade of the Eureka City, but it actually was much bigger. Most of the stuff was built out of timber and corrugated iron. When the wars broke out, they sold the corrugated iron and the sash windows to get funding to go back overseas. Most of the people that lived here didn't come from South Africa, so they all needed to board a boat and leave the country. Over a weekend, they would make about £1,500. And you can imagine for 1885 and 1887, £1,500 for a weekend was a lot of money. Most of the alcohol they drank here was imported, gins and beers from overseas. In my office you can actually see the bottles. So most of the collection in our museum comes from Eureka City.
So we've just stopped at the local picnic spot. Kids are busy climbing on the trees, and yeah, we're just gonna have a picnic and enjoy the rest of the afternoon before we hit the mines. In 1886, its population around 700 people, the town had 3 shops, 3 hotels, a bakery, a chemist, a racecourse, music halls and bars to cater for all the diggers in the surrounding areas. Nothing much remains today but an old ruin and fading ox wagon tracks. It is, however, possible to get an idea of what early gold pioneering history of South Africa was really like. Few places in South Africa provide such an authentic representation of what man is capable of going through to obtain fame and fortune.
Okay guys, so we're standing here at a rocky outcrop on Eureka City. And this is visible evidence of tidal movement. So if you just come down and you look here onto the rock, you'll notice that it's got all these little lines and little stripes, which they call the herringbone effect. And this is evidence of tidal movement
On top of this mountain.
on top of the mountain. This is Mr. Edwin Bray, and he came to South Africa for the big gold rush, but he first started mining in Eureka and opened up 2 lead mines, where when the muzzles changed and they no longer used lead to use for the guns, the mines closed down. And then he found himself west of Barberton at Moody's Estates, and he was actually coming this direction to visit a friend. And he was totally disgusted how everybody in this area was making gold or finding gold, and he never ever got that lucky. So he was walking up, and through the tour you'll hear later on that gold was discovered in quartz, and he was walking on top of the mountains just across from a Nildisperundum mine, and out of pure frustration and irritation he just hammered with his pick on the ground. And he opened up what is now called the richest gold mine in the world, Edwin Bray's golden quarry. Unfortunately, his discovery was very short-lived. The mine was opened up in 1885. The lower level, which was opened in 1886, is still operational today, and the mining operations is still done in a similar technique. And he passed away in 1887. So this is the mine managers of the time. You can see how much gold was actually taken out. Okay, so this would have been for a month. This over here is gold in transit, like we have problems today. Transporting gold, transporting money. This was theirs. You can see people are very heavily armed. And they used a Lamborghini to transport it with, which means it was a very skinny wheeled ox wagon with horsepower. So they would have 6 to 8 horses, and it would take them 2.5 hours from here to get back into town. Okay. Then this is, if you can remember this picture when we get down to the lower shaft, if you remember how the tracks are in the entrance, this is exactly how it still looks today. We haven't changed much of the original mine entrance. This is support. Now, what happened in the 1800s, Barberton was a grasslands area. There was no timber, so all the wood had to be imported. And obviously with pine being the fastest growing trees, the miners started planting trees into rows, and that's how our plantations actually started here, way back in the 1800s already. This is just to show you how the mining looks in the 1800s. If I had to do a modern photo today, it will be exactly the same. The stopes underground look exactly the same, except it will be in color and they would be in blue or white uniforms. Okay, and then also we never had any, what do they call them, slaves. Nobody was enslaved in Barberton. Everybody were employees, they were workers. Okay, you'll also see this when we get down to the 1886 where they opened that up. This is still in existence there today as well. Nothing has changed. And then with Edwin Bray being the richest man in the world, he could import machinery. So he imported crushers and mills and all of that. But keeping in mind, the closest port we have is Lorenzo Marques, Mozambique. It would take 6 hours on an ox wagon, 6 hours, 6 days on an ox wagon to travel to Barberton. And the only way to get here is over a hill and through a river. So the only time they could travel is in the winter season when the rivers were low. So summer season, you couldn't get food in, you couldn't get anything in. It was very, very difficult. This was the Sheba tramway. This is just to show that, once again, Edwin Bray, richest man in the world,
had his own train.
Had his own train to transport. They actually bought up all the shares out of all the mines in the area. This was the ZK shaft I showed you now.
The blue one, yeah.
The blue one, okay. And it was redone 3 years ago into its new structure. But it looks exactly like that. The offices are still there, the ZK is the same place, the buildings are all exactly in the same place.
Like you just like fixed it all up.
They just fixed it up from wood to metal, yeah, and they do that every few years. This is just to show you some pictures of historical Barberton. One of the things that is Barberton's biggest flaw is that there was no town planner when the guys arrived. So the town planner arrived months after the town being discovered, and the town planner would like to put the roads down, and then they would have to say to people, well, can you just move your house like 4 meters to the left or pack it up and move it, you know? And the guy was like, no, we can't. So in Barberton, when you travel, you'll find corners in the weirdest dead ends in the weirdest places, and yeah. Okay, this is the Lewis and Marks building. This is the first and the second floor. The mine that we represent, East Barberton Mines, bought this building in 1889. It was constructed in 1887 and bought by Barberton Mines in 1889. This whole thing here was not built with bricks. Or it was built with bricks but not with cement, because there wasn't any cement. So in between the bricks there's actually a clay, muddy layer where there should be cement. And then when they built the third level on in the 1900s, cement was available in Barberton back then. And they then had to plaster the outside of the building to try and preserve it, because the mud was obviously starting to disintegrate between the buildings. This was also the Bank of Africa. So in some of the photographs you'll see that there is guys delivering the gold and the money to the bank, and they also had a jail. This is the Phoenix Hotel, built in the 1885s, and it's been in the same location, had the same name for over 130 years, has never changed, has never moved. There was a fire there once that was rebuilt, but up until a few years ago, the rooms still looked as if they came out of the 1800s. Okay, this is the Pilgrim Street in Barberton. Okay.
We know that street.
You know that street, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that's the Phoenix Hotel in. Okay, this is just the center of Barberton. This was a congregation of miners that were on strike and complaining about their working conditions, and the president actually came down to address them. So I just recently, as in on Wednesday, found a document where what happened was the president was actually not invited to this meeting, and the gold commissioner was invited to the meeting, and he let it slip to the president about what was going on in Barberton, and the president decided, well, I have to go, you know, I need to represent. The president being Afrikaans, the miners being English, he came down to Barberton, and this is actually where he then stood on a stage and gave a speech in English. So the miners were very impressed that he could actually speak English, because nobody up until that point had actually heard him speak English. So they took him to the Phoenix Hotel next door and obviously had a few drinks. Okay. This is our famous lady of the night. She's called Cockney Liz. This links Barberton with the Pilgrim's Rest story. So I'm not going to give away the book, so you can buy the book. She was the wealthiest woman in Barberton. Women weren't allowed to work. You won't find any photographs of a woman in a cafe or anything like that. But they were allowed to be bartenders and things. So she was
prostitutes.
She was auctioned.
Yeah.
She was auctioned off by the mayor, and how they paid is gold, claims, shares. Some people paid in diamonds. So she must have been pretty popular. She was absolutely stunning and had a voice of an angel. Other famous person that lived here is Sir Percy Fitzpatrick, the Jock of the Bushveld story. So Sir Percy Fitzpatrick would go on his travels and then come back, and he would tell the children about the things that have happened to him and his dog on the way. And a friend said to him, well, why don't you put it in a book? And then that's how Jock of the Bushveld was born. So in most of the mines, because you're going into the historical mine from surface coming in, it's very easy to get in, but you can't get out. So the miners would live 2 weeks underground at a time. Food will be sent and things like that to them. Yes, they did do all their business underground. Yeah. And another problem they had was that there was a lack of oxygen. If you use candles or carbine, both of these burn with oxygen, which wasn't available then underground.
And some mines used to have donkeys, what?
Some mines used to operate with donkeys. The same thing for the donkey. The donkey could get in, but he couldn't get out. You can't.
So he lived in the mine his whole life?
He lived in the mine his whole life.
That's so sad.
But the biggest thing is he would go blind. So if the donkey did come out to surface, he would then be blinded for life. Okay, so you guys can feel the cold air, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, that's called a natural ventilation. Because this is the top of Brays Golden Quarry and it's open, there is the hot air rises and the cool air comes in. And this is what we use in this mine while it's still operational, to get fresh air down to the workers.
So this mine is still going?
This mine is still going, not on this level, but on the 7th level.
So it's the oldest mine?
Oldest existing, working, commercially mined mine.
Ow.
You guys just have to shine for all of us here while we are going in. Okay, so this is pretty modern. The guys with torches, if you can just shine onto the walls for us, you'll see that there are some drilling holes around us where they used explosives. So this is fairly modern. Okay, so obviously this is of huge geological impact. This is the early working, so this is where we are currently, in the top half of the quarry.
This is truly an amazing feat of human achievement. The vast cavernous mine was entirely dug by hand more than a century ago, and it has been described as a man-made Kango caves.
So you can see that the workings is at 45 degrees. Okay, so that means that the gold is placed at 45 degrees. So this was the old bridge that we used to go into, and then when the new general manager, 3 months here in Barberton, and we took him over this bridge, there was obviously a rail on the other side. He refused to go in, and he stood underneath the hanging wall, and he said, there's only 2 ways I will allow you to go in here. Number 1, we need to take the ladder away, and we'll build you a new ladderway with some form of protection. So the gentleman who bought this little bridge has never walked on it. He's too scared. And the reason for that is he's scared of heights. So when you walk over, look down.
Holy smokes.
And here above us, this thing here is called a pillar. So a pillar is left behind to keep the mine stable. So even if there's 100% gold in the pillar, we will not remove the pillar because it's there to keep the thing stable. So the size of the quarry, you can only see the magnitude actually from the top looking down, but due to safety reasons, you guys can see the rocks are falling. They don't want us to go up there anymore. So this is as far as what we go. But to look at the gold, if you look at to the right of us, you'll see those white stripes there in the, there we go. Okay, those are quartz veins. So those quartz veins are the original veins that Edwin Bray chipped out. So you can see it's placed at 45 degrees, and that then continues all the way down. So this mine was so rich that Edwin Bray would literally just come in here with a little pick hammer, pick a rock and walk out, and he was guaranteed of gold.
How many people worked in the mine?
Over 300.
How would they clean it?
They would crush it down. In the beginning it was very difficult because they never had the instrumentation.
Yeah.
But later on they had crushers.
Yeah,
10
that he
stones,
brought in,
that
obviously.
he would then bring in. So they would have very, over here, when they started from surface, right? And then they would dig down and dig down, and then they opened up this whole thing. So if you look around here, not much explosives was used in the beginning as well, because there wasn't any.
Not necessary.
Yeah. And this type of rock is very soft. It's very easy to use a hammer and a chisel to get it out. And it would all be pulled with ropes. From the ropes, it would be placed into wheelbarrows, from the wheelbarrows into ox wagons, and the ox wagons could take 3 tons at a time, and then they would travel up and down and then go drop the ore off. But this mine was rich, 250 grams per ton.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Egg! No, man, it's a skull. It's a monkey or something. So fascinating, this whole history of mining in South Africa.